Have you ever miscalculated and paid the price for it? I surely have. Maybe you drove past a gas station thinking your tank could make it just a few more miles.
What is it now?
There's still some overlap between the needle and the slash below the E.
Ever been completely below the slash?
Well, I almost did once, and I blacked out. When I came to, the car was in a ditch and the tank was full.
Or you went on a family vacation and miscounted how many kids you have.
How could we do this? We forgot him.
We didn't forget him. We just miscounted.
Maybe you misjudged how your crush felt about you.
Come on, you didn't blow it. I think maybe... What the
Miscalculating leads to mistakes. And what happens when you make a mistake? You overcorrect. When a ref blows a pass interference call, he usually gives that team the next call to even it out. It's not fair, but he's overcorrecting, and that does change the nature of the game. It's no different than what's happening in America right now. What we see on TV, in the movies, online, are making us believe things about our country that aren't true. And we're making major decisions based off perception, not reality. Instead of tackling inflation or the border, today our president signed a bill to classify lynching as a hate crime. How is this our top priority right now? Nobody's been lynched in America in decades. Call it whatever you want to call it, a hate crime. Fine with me. Good. It's heinous. But is this the top concern for the American people? This is behind the cost of living? And it's not just the president who doesn't know the country. It seems most of the country has no idea who we are either. A new poll by YouGov asked people what percentage of the United States is black. Their answer, 41%. We think almost half the U.S. population is African American. And that makes sense if you consume a lot of media. But it turns out black Americans are a smaller slice of the pie than they thought. The real number, 12%. Only 12% of Americans are African American. How about Hispanic Americans? The poll shows that we all think that 39% of Americans are Hispanic. Way off again. Only 17% of the population is Hispanic. And it's not just race that we have no idea about. How many families have an annual income of over $500,000? We think 26% of Americans make over $500,000 a year. We think everybody's rich. But really, just 1% of the country earns that much. We all make much less than we think. How about left-handed Americans? How many lefties exist? We all had those lefty desks in school. Remember how goofy it felt if you got stuck in one of those? Well, we estimated that 34% of America is left-handed. Sounds reasonable. I mean, each baseball team has a bunch of lefty relievers. But the real number is 11%. This is a right-hander's world, and don't forget it. How about this? How about the number of vegans or vegetarians? Well, Americans think 30% of the country is vegetarian, when really 5% of the population doesn't eat meat, which explains why it's the only thing left on the store shelves right now. Nobody wants it. How much of America's population, you ready, lives in New York City? The estimate was 30%, which would be nearly 100 million people, 1/3 of the country packed into 300 square miles here. That's what we think. The real number, 3%. Just 3% of the country lives here in New York. Ready? How many transgender people do you think live in the United States? The people who took this poll estimated 21% of our nation's population is transgender. 21%. A quarter of the country is trans. That's what people think. Now, are these news stories starting to make sense? In reality, the number is 1%. 1% is trans. How about gay people? We spend a lot of time talking about sexual orientation. With all that attention, surely that number must be high. Well, Americans, estimated that 30% of their fellow citizens are gay. Wrong again. The real number is 3%. Now, is this starting to add up? The Democrats don't want you to know the real numbers because it would tank their entire agenda. They want you to see victims around every corner and elect more Democrats to right the ship. Millions of people who look differently, with different lifestyles, who eat differently, and who believe radically different things. It's just not true. This country is not New York City. It is the United States of America. Take this school situation in Florida, for example. Ron DeSantis signed a law banning teachers from talking about sexual orientation and gender theory in kindergarten through third grade. Think about it. When did you learn about sexual orientation and gender theory? Kindergarten? First grade? Second grade? Third? Probably none of the above. I didn't even really start liking girls till like fifth grade. This is what the Democrats are pushing. Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe they're among the millions of people who are miscalculating, who think 21% of the country's transgender. Now, this law has the left really upset. One teacher tweeting this: out of the 32 students that I teach, 20 of them are LGBTQIA+. I feel that we need to do better. A fourth grade teacher says 2/3 of her fourth grade students are not straight. I could be wrong, but this statistically is not possible. And it's not just the teachers who fall for this stuff. Disney is going all in on this too. This just happened a few minutes ago.
So we no longer say ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We've provided training for all of our cast members in relationship to that. So now they know it's hello everyone or hello friends. We are in the process of changing over those recorded messages. And so many of you are probably familiar when we brought the fireworks back to the Magic Kingdom. We no longer say ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We say dreamers of all ages. I don't want to just assume because someone might be in our interpretation, maybe presenting as female, that they may not want to be called princess.
Disney has gone gender neutral. Disney will no longer be saying girls be boys, ladies and gentlemen. 1% of the American population is transgender. So Disney is changing everything for the 99% to accommodate that 1% who might feel uncomfortable if you welcome boys and girls into Disney World. I don't get it. Surveys show a majority of Democrats in Florida support the DeSantis bill. A majority of Democrats support what DeSantis is doing. See what I mean? We have a lot in common here in America. And when we know what the facts are, we can get a lot done together. But they don't want us to know the facts. They want us ignorant and angry. But nobody who watches Primetime will ever feel that way.
Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.